All I have to say is I am so excited about our guest today. I saw her on the computer and I hunted this sister down because her testimony is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I just can't wait to introduce you to her. So hold on for a second. Betty, Betty, Betty. Hi.
Hello.
How
Hi.
are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh my goodness. I am so excited.
Me
I
too.
I am so excited and blessed and honored that you would come on and share your story. Girl, can I tell you what? When I was watching that other, I don't even remember what podcast it was that I was watching. But I remembered you started off saying that you love sharing your story, your testimony. And when you said that, it was like you were highlighted.
Oh,
Like a
wow.
highlighter came across everything. And I feel like I could tell your story right now. I could tell the like if you could just hear how I've been telling people your story, you would,
Oh,
oh, look at
wow.
you. But I'm going to try to calm down a little bit and give you an opportunity, Miss Betty Guadagno,
That's right. Yeah.
to share your story. And then the fact that your name is Betty, girl.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I love that. I
Mm-mm-mm.
love that synchronicity. So nice.
Yes, so please begin at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much just for believing in me and wanting me to collaborate with you on your dream. And I love that so much, being able to collaborate with other people. And yeah, I'll start with some backstory just to paint a picture of who I was before I had this very transformative spiritual experience. So I grew up in this very chaotic home, very dysfunctional, very chaotic, immersed in poverty and addiction, sexual trauma, a very dark family line. And it's been that way for generations and generations. And it's exhausting being the one to break all the generational curses, let me tell you. But that's what I'm here to do. So I grew up with drug addict parents, and I started using drugs at a very early age myself. My parents taught me how to use, their parents taught them how to use, and it's been that way forever and ever. And in 2007, my parents made a decision to stop using drugs. And they did that by committing suicide with each other. And when that loss happened in my life, it was like, yeah, this whole sort of like dark cloak came over me. Like I had felt like a victim my whole life. I had endured a lot of trauma in my life, a lot of sexual trauma, a lot of physical, emotional trauma. And when I experienced this loss, I was 23 years old. My sister was 18. We found them, and so we were just children. And I decided that I wasn't going to be a victim anymore after this loss, and I decided to become the abuser in people's storylines, including my own.
Wow.
And so, yeah, but I wore this loss as like a cloak of victimization. Like you can't tell me what I can do because I have, suffered
Yeah.
this really heinous thing, and
Yes.
I can use drugs if I want to, and I can abuse you if I want to. And so, I went throughout the rest of my life just really being a perpetrator in people's storylines, and my whole identity became drugs. I was already an addict before my parents had committed suicide. And there was two voices in my head when they died. And one voice said, you should stop using drugs. Your parents just died from them. And the other voice said, you have to keep using drugs. It's all you have left of them. And that voice just seemed to make more sense to me. And it
Mm-hmm.
was much more familiar. And so I just listened to that voice. And drugs became my whole identity. I thought I was a party girl. I was a bartender. It was my lifestyle. I thought that I was so fun, but it really stopped being fun like real quickly, but I just kept with it because I wasn't going to quit on it. That's the way that it felt for me anyway.
Right.
And so, I had endured some more loss in my life, and just more excuses for me to keep piling on top of one another, of reasons, excuses to use drugs and not face
And
reality.
by excuses, do you mean like people would say, Betty, you got to get your life together, and you'd say no because it's how would that manifest?
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot of people in my life that were like concerned for my
Wow.
well-being. But I will say that, yeah, there would be pockets of time when like a partner would be like, maybe things have gotten a little out of control. And I would say, no, no, you're wrong, because what about this and that? Like, how, don't you remember this and
Okay.
that? Like, of course, I got to keep using.
Okay.
And yeah, so I I was towards the end of my
Mhm.
active addiction, I was on hardcore drugs for over 20 years. Like I'm talking like every day using drugs since I was a kid.
Wow.
And towards the end of my active addiction, the last couple years specifically, my life became so unmanageable. I mean, like it just evaporated. It seemed like it happened instantly, but it was actually over 20 years in the making.
Hmm.
And I started doing, just insane amounts of really hardcore drugs. And I just wanted to not feel. I just wanted to not be present in my experience.
Hardcore
And I ended up overdosing. Go ahead.
hardcore drugs, just from my little North Carolina mindset, is that like
Yeah.
needles or sniffing?
Yeah, I didn't really get too much into using drugs intravenously just because I knew that that's how you died
Okay.
from using drugs.
Okay.
But like, the long list of drugs, I'm not sure like where you list your podcast. Some places flag if you say too much stuff.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay.
but just like every drug imaginable. I mean, like there is not a drug in existence that I was not addicted to.
Wow.
And, like uppers, downers, like, and psychedelics, like anything to just not be myself.
Okay.
And I had an opiate addiction for over 20 years.
Okay.
And in the end, things did start to become like intravenous. And that's when I knew that, like, okay, I might have a problem, maybe, just because I just couldn't figure out, I couldn't find a reason to live. So I was like, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die all the way.
Mm.
And I ended up overdosing. I had an overdose of hallucinogens. And yeah, it just kind of like broke the fabric of reality for me. And when I had unintentionally given myself this overdose, I didn't realize how much I had taken at the time that I took it. My like the whole universe just kind of cracked in half. So I kind of want to bring you through that moment. This is the moment when I had this spiritually transformative experience. So it was March of 2019, March 23rd to be exact, which is the beginning of the season of Aries, which is a symbol of rebirth. And that's exactly what happened to me. It was an absolute and utter
Mm.
rebirth. And my awakening actually took place at 3:33 p.m. And the only reason why I know that is because I tried to record what was happening to me, and it was 3:33 p.m. when I was recording.
Okay.
So another kind of divine synchronicity with angel numbers. So I was at the laundromat because I figured I might as well get real wavy to go do my laundry because it's so mundane and human. And while I was at the laundromat, I realized that I had taken too much and that I was about to embark on some kind of overdose. And, like I couldn't understand what I was doing there. How do I know that clothes get dirty? Who told me that? How do I know what laundry is? And I started to sprint home because the world just started to get real weird. And as I was, kind of like in a quick sprint home, I would get to a corner and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant. And I would get to the next corner and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant again and again. And I was stuck in this kind
Wow.
of loop. And all of a sudden, the whole world got washed in the brightest white light that I've ever experienced. And all of the buildings around me, all of these brownstones in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, all crumbled to the ground. And all that was left was the green lines of matrix code
Wow.
that make them up.
Chills.
Just a total deconstruction of this reality. And so then I started to really sprint home because I was like, I don't know what's happening. And, again, I just think that I'm tripping on drugs.
Yes.
And so I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I need to get somewhere safe. My house will be somewhere safe. And so I finally make it to my house. Somehow I break out of this little loop. I walk into my front door and I catch a glance of myself in the hallway mirror. and I have no idea who's staring back at me. No idea at all. And
Wait a minute, wait a
I
minute.
had like,
Question. You
go
have
ahead.
no idea because your mind cannot recognize you, or you have no idea because you look so different?
No, yeah, my mind just I could not comprehend who this person was, who this human was.
Okay.
And, like as the awakening started to take place a little bit further, it was because my soul was being called in and to the front
Yes.
where it had never been before,
Yes.
because my soul had been living on the back burner of my life, my entire existence,
Yes.
just like sort of simmering back there. So in this moment of awakening, it was finally waking
And
up
didn't
and
recognize.
seeing itself inside of a body, and then seeing the reflection of a body and saying, well, that's not me.
Wow.
Like, I know that I'm just light. What am I doing inside of this body? And yeah, it was so transformative. Like today I have some language for it, then I did not. And what I was experiencing was a spontaneous Kundalini awakening.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what Kundalini energy is, neither did I. So Kundalini energy, well, Kundalini is a type of yoga that people can do to awaken their Kundalini energy, which is basically an opening of the chakra
Yes.
system. So we have 7 energy centers inside of us. And the Kundalini is illustrated as a coiled serpent at the base of your spine in your root chakra. And when your Kundalini arises, it straightens up. And so all of your chakras open up with the arising of this Kundalini energy. And so what was taking place in my physical body was actually like violent shaking. And yeah, I ended up kind of getting shot out of the crown of my head and blasted back into home, back
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
eternity. In a non physical realm, I was enveloped in unconditional love in blinding white light. And, again, now I have some language for it. The people who have near death experiences, they describe the same space that I was in.
Mhm.
And, when I was taken into this space, I was guided by a masculine
Mhm.
voice, a person that I had met. And then the masculine voice sort of morphed into every man in my life. So
Mm.
my father's voice, I had a boyfriend who recently
Mm.
passed away. Like those voices became one voice and they guided me to the space of heaven along with this other masculine energy. And yeah, I, I mean, again, I didn't believe what was going on. I just thought like, whoa, I am tripping so hard. This is crazy. And, so while I was in this space, I did have such a feeling of home and such a feeling of love.
Mhm.
And then this kind of like thought of unworthiness tried to creep in. Like, what is this? I don't even believe in this. Why am I feeling this? Why am I perceiving this? And it was quickly combated away because, unconditional love is the only truth. And while I was in that space, I was, it really felt like I had just woken up from a dream.
Okay.
And I couldn't even grab any of my human life. I kind of like realized where I was and I was like, whoa, that was crazy thinking about my human
Okay.
life. And like when you wake up from an actual dream and you're trying to like grab at pieces of the dream, like, what was that? What
Yes.
happened? The only thing that I could remember was that my parents had committed suicide and nothing else, even I couldn't grab at any of it.
Wow.
So when I think about it now in retrospect, like all of the things that I get so hung up on the day to day, like I couldn't remember 35 years of life in that space. Like, nothing. I could grab at nothing except for one brief little 3-second memory.
Yeah.
So while I was in that space, I was told some things, I was shown some things, I was downloaded with some information. I was told that I was a spiritual soldier and that I was sent to earth to help the collective in awakening from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional
Mhm.
thinking. And the first part of my life was boot camp. And that's why it was so challenging and hard. And the next half of my life was going to be carrying out my mission. And I was very dismissive of this idea. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't, yeah, this is nuts. And so then they took me through my pre birth planning. And when I say they, it felt like, people in charge
Uh-huh.
of whatever this is that we're experiencing, not condemning in any way, not judging, just in charge. Like, they hold the structure together.
Mhm.
And so they took me through my pre birth planning. And, how some people believe in an afterlife, I was shown my life pre-life
Before.
and that I had chosen everything that had ever happened to me. So I chose to be an addict. I chose to be born to drug addict parents. I chose the family line that I would be born into. I chose the people that I would be the abuser in their storylines. I chose my husbands. I chose my partners. I chose my teachers. I chose my mentors. And then there was some things that I had chosen that I hadn't gotten to yet, you know, like recovery and overcoming and being able to make cosmic connections with people like this and share testimonies back and forth and connect. And, you know, I hadn't gotten to any of that stuff in my life yet, but I did recognize that, okay, it looks like I did pick all of this stuff. And, you know, like in the moment of being downloaded with this particular belief, it was like 2 tons of bondage had just been like
Lifted.
released from my back.
Mm.
Totally me, you know, like I was no longer a victim to my circumstance. I wasn't even like the terrible abuser that I thought I was. You know, like I was actually a divine co-creator of my reality, and so is everyone else. And so in this moment of having this belief put into my awareness, yeah, it was like freedom, you know, like true freedom. And so I begged to stay in that space. I begged, I pleaded, I transformed into a small child. I was pounding my fists on the ground and kicking my feet. And I said, please let me stay. Do not make me go back. And they said, you have to go back. Like this, the second half of your life is your mission. And it's not going to be anything like the first half. And I said, no,
Mm.
I won't do it. I'm sorry. I will not go back. I said, you guys do not tell us what Earth is actually like. You have no perception of it. It's dense, it's heavy, it's dark, it's suffering, it's sadness, and I will not go back. And they said, that's not what your life is going to be like when you go back.
Mm.
And said, you have to go back. And I said, well, I won't go back into her. And I could see my body outside myself. I said, she needs way too much healing. She is glitched. I will not even attempt it. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And they showed me, it kind of looked like a video game. And so I saw like 3 babies, and it was only focused on one avatar, one little baby. And, you know, they showed me the stats next to the
Mm-hmm.
baby. And so it showed me her gender, her ethnicity, where she would be born, her parents, her life's adversities, her purpose, her mission. And this baby's life was even more challenging than the life I had
Oh
already
my
lived.
goodness.
And I mean, my life was challenging, you know what I
Yes.
mean? And they said, you know, like there's certain lessons that you have to complete because you're here for this divine mission. You're here to transmute a lot of dark
There's
energy.
greatness
And
in you. So if you go back,
right,
you're gonna have to do the stuff that you just left and that baby. Yes. Okay.
right. Yes. And so, you know, it was, I just couldn't even imagine starting from zero. And because this baby had more adversity than myself, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to have to encounter that. And so I just threw my figurative hands up in the air and I said, okay, if this is my only choice, then I guess I'm going back. I mean, you're not really giving me a choice. And they said, listen, you're going to live a life beyond anything you've ever thought for yourself. All you have to do is let go of drugs. And that was like the big, loud message. 2 messages, very loud and
Wow.
clear. You have to go back to earth. You have to stop using drugs. And so, you know, I'm like, whoa, I'm so high that drugs just broke up with me. You know, all I knew was that I took a bunch of drugs and then all of a sudden they were telling me not to do them anymore. And so, you know, I came back from this experience and I just wrote it off as drug induced psychosis because who wouldn't? You know, I was a devout atheist when I entered this space.
Wow.
You know, like I didn't have space in my life to believe in anything else because my main belief was in drugs. You know, drugs were my God. They were my higher power. They were my identity. They were my parent. They were my partner. They were my lover.
Mm.
They were my best friend. And there's just no space when you have
Mm.
drugs being every part of your existence for God or spirituality or anything else. And so I just wrote it off as psychosis. And I went about my life and I kept trying to use drugs and you know, like drugs just began to not work.
Mm.
And, you know, I had all these divine synchronicities starting to take place in my life. Like all of the drug dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade, I'm talking about like a handful of people, they all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling
Wow.
drugs. They did not know each other, but like they all made this decision at the exact same moment. And so now I had no way to get drugs because these were all of my
Everything shut
connections.
down. Wow.
Every door closed, slammed shut. That's like what it felt like. It felt like I was in some narrow hallway and every door was just slamming in my face. And I had to just keep walking down the
Wow.
hallway. And so, drugs just began to not work. And, like I said, I had an opiate addiction. So, I was strung out on heroin and I really needed drugs in order to not get sick. Like I didn't use that drug because I loved it or because like it made me feel any kind of way. I used that drug for so long because I was trying to avoid getting sick.
Mm.
Because the physical withdrawal of heroin is really so painful because everything in your mind is so confused and it thinks that you're physically in pain when nothing is actually wrong.
Wow.
And so I was on day 3 of heroin withdrawal and I was so sick. I mean, like sicker than I've
Wow.
ever been. I've gone through heroin withdrawal, quite a number of times, but this time was like nothing I'd ever experienced. And, like some of the symptoms of heroin withdrawal is like you're sweating, you have chills. It really feels like your bones are on fire. It felt like my bones were like these campfire logs
Mm.
and they were just like, so engulfed in
Mm.
flame and tar and it felt so heavy and I'm sweating and I'm sick all over myself and I'm laying in bed and I said out loud to myself, wow, I couldn't even kill myself if I wanted to because I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of bed to figure out a way to kill
Mm.
myself. And this was like my moment of mental suicide, like mental spiritual suicide, whatever it
Yeah.
was. Maybe I physically did kill myself and I transferred into another universe. I don't know, but in this moment I heard this voice and it was so loud and so clear and so loving, and it said to me, you can request what you want fixed. And I was like in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay,
Mm.
right. Okay. What do I
Mm.
need fixed? I need
Right.
$10,000. I
Right.
need, I need more
Yes.
heroin. I said, you know what? No.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
Right.
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 Right. I'm like, okay. And I was really over intellectual about it. Cause like, so I said, I want my pain receptors and my
Wait a
neurotransmitters
minute. Pause.
fixed. I want
Pause.
to no
So you're
longer.
in all of this intense pain. You hear this voice say, ask for what you want. And you say, I want my pain receptors. Not, I want the pain to stop. You
Uh,
specifically
you
say,
know what? I had like, yes, I had only like just started using my brain. I just like, yeah, there was something about the psychedelics, and I don't advocate for like recreational use of drugs or anything, but something about the psychedelics and the awakening had really cracked open my awareness, and I was using a deeper vocabulary for the first time in my entire life.
wow.
But I knew about pain receptors and neurotransmitters because I had been to treatment before. I understood what heroin does to the physical body. And I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my drug addiction because I still wanted to use
So
other
you,
drugs. There was other drugs that I was mentally addicted to that I loved. And I was like, well, I'm not getting rid of those. I just want to no longer be physically dependent on this one substance.
yes.
And so I listened to the voice. I even wrote it down on a post-it note next to me. And I'm sure I spelled neurotransmitters wrong. And I laid back and I felt what felt like X's go across my forehead. And I felt a palm on my head. And then in my mind's eye, I saw these 2 little men. They popped up just like a video game. I have like a lot of video game imagery in my spiritual experience, partly because of the generation I was
I
born in
love
and
it.
my belief my beliefs around like a simulation theory and stuff like that. So, my mind, my thought
Yes.
process,
Yes.
makes all of these particular
Yes.
things. Some people see Jesus. I saw video game characters,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Because of just the amount of knowledge that I had about spirituality. So I saw these 2 little men. They appeared in my mind's eye. They were these little white bald men with these bulbous noses, and they had lawnmowers in front of them, and they were wearing white lab coats like doctors. And they were just chilling right there. And then all of a sudden, they started to go back and forth into each crevice of my mind.
Mm.
And as they walked slowly through these crevices, I felt these intense hot tingles.
Mm.
And I just knew that I was being
Mm.
healed in this moment.
Mm.
I knew that they were healing my brain.
Mm.
And I felt like a plunger on the top of my head. And as it plunged down and came back up, this big white flash overtook me. And I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal.
Wow.
And this was the moment when I realized that my hallucinogenic trip was
Was
not a
real.
hallucinogenic trip. This was a real
Wow.
experience, and I did have a mission. And the universe, my angels, my guides, the other dimensional beings that guide me on my
Yes.
path, they were making sure that I was, physically fit
Yes.
to be spiritually
Yes.
fit.
It's so funny too.
And so
It's
my
so
path,
funny because it seems like first your higher self had to meet you.
oh
Because
yeah,
at the beginning you said you were doing the drugs because you didn't want to be yourself. Then when your higher self saw you, it was like, who am I? But when you were coming off that heroin, I just bet your higher self was helping you make that decision because now it's present. It's like, Betty, we got stuff to do. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm excited.
yeah. Oh no, yeah, thank you for adding that. Absolutely, that's what it felt like. In fact, after the healing, I could see like out of the corner of my eye because I couldn't look straight at them, but lined up against my bedroom dresser was like 7
Wow.
entities and they all looked like different. I mean, the best way that I can describe it because I have no language for it is like they were all different kinds of aliens, or like different kinds of star seeds, like they were different
Yes.
dimensional beings. There was like this one, she was beautiful. She was so tall and elegant. She was like probably 7 feet tall and she looked like
Mm.
stardust. She was like iridescent and just so beautiful. And I remember her most distinctly, and it seemed like all of these different versions of myself, like maybe she
In
was
in
me,
another dimension.
in some other galaxy.
I got chills. Can you see them? Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
love
Go
it.
ahead.
Me too. Me too. So, my path became crystal clear after this healing. There was no way for me to deny what had happened to me because honestly, 1 minute before I was throwing up all over
Mm.
myself. And the next minute I was perfectly fine and I was able to walk around. And so I wandered over to the
Wow.
subway, the New York City subway system, and I had no destination. I just was like, okay, I'm just going to trust my guidance. Like my guidance told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. I'm going to continue to
Oh,
listen to
wow.
it. And so I just got on this train with no destination, no direction. I just sat down and I just waited. And then all of a sudden, this man appeared across from me and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice and it said, "That's your path. Follow
Mm.
him to a meeting." And that was on June 1st, 2019. And I've been clean ever since. And thank you. The coolest thing I've ever done with my
Mm.
life. It really, really is. It's the coolest thing. And to know that I was divinely guided to my particular 12-step fellowship, it just gives me such a great foundation to bounce off of because I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I love the community that I'm a part of today. And I went to a couple more meetings over the next couple of days, because I just didn't know what was going on or what to do. I went to a women's meeting the next day. And if you're not familiar with 12-step fellowship, it's for people who have experienced problems with addiction in their life, depending on which addiction, and they go for support in a
Mm-hmm.
fellowship
Mm-hmm.
of their peers. And there's these 12 steps that were written that guide us in our healing process. And so I went to this women's meeting the next day. And, like when I came into this process, I did not look the way that I look today. I was like on the verge of homelessness. I was hopeless. I was
Wow.
toothless. And, like, thanks to my recovery journey, I've been able to get all those things back in my life today, including some teeth.
Wow. Yay.
And I, yeah, I walked into this meeting and this woman, like you could tell that I was real messed up. Like I said, I looked really messed up. And she grabbed me like she knew me,
Mm.
and she squeezed me so tight. She gave me a hug that like only a
Mm.
mother could give, or just like only like a real, like an angel could give, And she hugged me so tight and she whispered in my ear and she said, "You are deserving of all of the love in the universe." And I believed her. I
Mm.
don't know why. Like I had no reason to. Nothing in my physical experience was telling me that I was worthy of anything. But this woman told me that
And
I
you
was.
believed in
And just with all of the divine, all the divine experiences that had just happened in my life, I thought, this has got to be a message from Source. This is Source telling me something that I need to hear. And I'm going to believe her. And so I
it.
just melted into
Mm.
her arms and I sat in that meeting. I cried. And I went to another meeting the next day, and it was a meeting of about 70 people. And I found myself sitting 2 seats away from the program director of a long-term rehab for women here in Brooklyn, New York. And I just knew that it was another divine setup for me. Like, I'm in this meeting. I have no idea how to be a person. I don't know how to do anything without drugs. And now I'm sitting next to a woman whose life's purpose, her profession, is teaching women how to be women again after the use of
Wow.
drugs. And so, I was getting my courage together throughout the meeting because I had a plan to talk to her when the meeting was over. And so, I'm like sitting there the whole meeting and I'm like, you can do it. Like, I'm giving myself like this internal pep talk. And the meeting ends and I get up. It's like all confident to go over to her and to beg her to help me in my life. And she had left early. And
No.
I was so defeated. I know. I felt totally defeated. I was like, man, but I had a plan. I was going to call that institution and like beg for help. So I went on the bus to go home. And as I stepped onto the bus, that woman was sitting right there.
Wow.
I know. She left the meeting early and was somehow on the exact same bus
Wow.
as me, not at the bus stop in front of the meeting because that's where I was. And I ran up to her totally manic. And I was like, oh my God, I think that you're actually an angel sent to earth. I want to talk to you inside, but you're already gone. And now here you are. And I can't believe it. Oh my God. Can you help me? Please, can you help me? And she said, yeah, we can help you. Come by tomorrow. We have a bed. And, this was a sentence that was about to change my whole life. I mean, like, I didn't know it, and I doubt that she knew it, but like, this was it. This was my moment of crossing the threshold. Like, I was about to embark on a journey into a world that I've never experienced before, a world without using
Mm.
drugs and a world of healing. And, these were all things that I had
And
avoided my
wait a
whole
minute, Betty.
life.
Wait a minute.
And so
Wait
I
a
went to
minute.
that program
All
the
of
very
this,
next day.
the 12-step program, that's no charge. And
No charge. Yeah. 12 step
and then
is
the
free
program with
fellowship.
this lady, was that free too?
Well, it was a covered, I was on Medicaid, so it was covered by
Okay. I'm
insurance.
wondering. For people who need this,
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. That's a
Okay.
great question. Yeah. Like most drug treatment centers are covered by insurance. If you don't have insurance, they'll help you get
Okay.
insurance. And if for some reason you don't qualify for government assistance, there's scholarships available, like through the
So
government and
just
through the
get
state to
there.
get you paid
Just get
for.
there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's not easy. Like I went there with just the clothes on my back. I didn't have anything to take. And, I met 25 other women who were also attempting to heal from their
Wow.
addiction. And that's like not a sexy slumber party. Like there's no like popcorn and movies. Like it's serious work. It's very strifeful, like yeah, just trying to heal with all these other women. And, I had never been around women before, and I'd never really been around people like that
Mm.
before. And I definitely didn't know how to heal or how to feel or how to
Wow.
behave. And so,
Wow.
I just took everything very
Wow.
slow. I tried to make friends. I failed. The women there did not like me. I was, in the midst of this awakening and I had no language for it. And so I just kept saying, like, don't you guys know that you're dead? Don't you know that we're all dead? And like I had no language that for the first time in my life, I was actually alive.
Wow.
Like what I was before was
Yes.
death. And this was me being alive, but I just really thought that because I had gone to heaven, I was dead. And really all that I was doing in that treatment center was trying to get back to
Mm.
heaven. I didn't really care too much about recovering. I just thought like they told me I had to get off drugs, so that's what I'm doing. And maybe after I get to a certain point of being off of drugs, they'll call me back home. And so that was
Mm.
like my main motivation. And, I made like all these goal lists inside a treatment, and on the top of every one of my goal lists, it says ascension. Like that is
Wow.
my number one goal, just to leave form and go back. But now that I've integrated my experience, it's not that way
Wow.
for me anymore. Like now I realize that it's not about going back to heaven. It's about
That's
bringing
what
heaven here.
yes.
And I do that
Yes.
in my life
Yes.
today. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah. And so, I went to school while I was in that program. I stayed there for 17 months. I really had no idea how to be a person. Like they had to teach me how to brush my teeth without being high first. They had to teach me how to take care of myself, how to go to doctor's appointments, how to feed myself, like things that I had just forgotten how to do
Yeah.
over the years, or maybe nobody ever really taught me. And so, it
Mm,
was like a total redo. And so by the time I left, I was 17 months into recovery. So I liken that to being a 17-month-old baby. And so, like I can barely walk, I can barely talk, and I'm like holding on to the guardrails to do everything. And I need a lot of support. And I went to school while I was there and I became a peer advocate. And so I have a job in the recovery field today, which is so amazing to be able to give back. I used to do really unsavory things for work. I was immersed in sex work and I would manipulate other women to get them involved with sex work as well so that we could make money for our addictions. And today I have this amazing opportunity to make a universal amends and I assist women on their healing journeys
ah,
today, and it's more than I ever could have thought for myself. And it's given me so much freedom, and I'm able to see these reflections of myself, like where I work, like people that are immersed in their addiction, people that are trying to get clean, and it's just like it reminds me of a past version of
yes.
myself or a future version of myself if I'm not careful. Like I'm not immune to the fact that like my life could go right back into darkness with just one
Yes.
decision. Like one decision that I make to come off my spiritual path and go back into the darkness, and that's it.
One thing that you
Um,
one thing that you
so
said
okay.
in the interview that I saw that I really loved is you said you gave all of the addictions names. So
Yes.
I think one was Richard,
Yeah.
maybe. You said,
Oh yeah, that's
if he
right.
says just come on, just take one breath.
So yeah, yeah, part of my healing process was to do character development around all these other pieces of myself. So, like, through my integration process, which has involved like reading every sacred text, figuring out what resonates for me and what doesn't, and then cherry picking my own spirituality through that. I've found that doing deep visualization and character development around the outer parts of myself, meaning the only part of me that I perceive is actually true is my spirit. That is the only piece of me that is actually true. However, I am on earth. I am having a human experience. My human is called Betty, and Betty has a lot of facets to her. So like it's kind of like being an actor in a movie
Yes.
or a play, right? This is the role that I've been here to create. And I love being a method
Yes.
actor. Like I love really diving into the emotions and really like holding true to them. I don't have to if I
Yes.
don't want to. I can just let things ebb and flow and come and go. But like I'm a human, and so I want to play the part of a human. So for me, my soul felt so fractured, from loss, from abuse, from trauma, all of these things. It was like each time something happened, a piece of me kind of cracked off. And then when I had this spiritual experience, I saw my whole healed self,
Mm,
and I thought, like, I just want to stay her. Like, how do I just stay her? And so yeah, one of the things that I do is shadow work. And even doing the 12 steps really helps me as well, because it's also a form of shadow work. And so I have done character development around each part of myself. So I have a drug addiction. It's a man and his name is Richard. And, he talks to me and he sounds very convincing, like when he says like, oh, let's just use once, like nobody's ever going to know, like, don't forget who you are. Like you're a drug addict.
mm,
And, it takes my spiritual tools being very, very sharp for me to say, not right now,
mm.
not right now, Richard, we'll get back to you later. And, like I developed a lot of eating disorders in the process of recovery. Like I couldn't grab at drugs to comfort me anymore. And so I just grabbed at whatever I could. And that happened to be food. And so a lot of really nasty stuff developed with food. And so I had to break down those pieces of myself and do character development around them. And it's not really about banishing those pieces of myself, because there is a piece of me that wants to just say like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. It's about integrating those pieces of myself. Like, how can Richard and I live a coexistent, like
Mm-hmm.
life together without him being in the driver's
Mm,
seat? Like he has to come along for the ride. He's part of me, but like he doesn't have to have
right.
control. And I've done that with so many pieces of myself, like my inner child, my inner young adult. I have like 7 inner teenagers because I was like in such identity crisis as a teenager. So like there's so many different versions of me. And I have an inner saboteur who's actually been showing up in my life a lot lately. Like I've been experiencing some
Yes.
success and some joy, living in
Yes.
my purpose and like being in this stream. And my inner saboteur wants to be
Yes.
part of that. And she wants to be part of that by messing
Yes.
stuff up.
Yes.
It's her job,
Yes.
you know? And so I have to cover her in like this pink light and these sparkles and say, like, you can be here with me, but please don't mess things up. Like, let's keep it clean,
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, and those tools for me have really helped me a lot because it helps me see that they're not
Yes.
me. Like these pieces of me are not me. They're outside of me and they don't have
Now,
to
do you
rule
think
me.
you can tell that they're not you because you were able to meet you?
Ooh, that's really good. Yes, but I think that even if I hadn't met me, I would, this work that I've done. So the one book that I did that was very transformative for myself was this book called Heal Your Inner Wounds by Abby Wynn. And, this isn't like for people who have had spiritual experiences. It's just for anybody who wants to
Mm-hmm.
heal themselves. And I think that by doing this work, you do get to meet
Mm.
yourself by exercising your own creative ability to recognize your shadow. You will inevitably meet your light. Like it is inevitable. As long as I'll keep it on me, as long as I do the inner work, my light is always going to present itself to me because I'm taking action to be the best
Now, let
version
me
of
ask you this.
myself.
I understand, I've had a lot of experiences with my angels and my higher self and all of that. But what I
Mhm.
don't understand is my shadow. Is my shadow that piece of me that says, like for a long time, I've known that I had a calling, but I felt like I was supposed to do it when I got grown, when I was and I'll be 56 this year, but I don't feel grown,
Wow, that's amazing.
and then I think, while a lot of what I know, it just kind of comes through me. And so I'm like, is it going to show up? Is that my shadow? Is it going to show up? Why is anybody going to listen to me? Who cares what, you know what I mean? Is that my shadow?
Mhm. Definitely. That's
Mm,
it. Yeah. These twinges of self-doubt, the pieces of yourself that you want to not acknowledge and banish. So basically your shadow is really comprised of, like, have you ever looked at somebody and like given them a snap judgment? Of course, we all have, right? So like for me, one of the big things was like, I do not like liars. What is the main reason why I don't like liars? Because I myself was a liar for most of
gotcha.
my life. And it's a piece of myself that I cannot
Gotcha.
stand. And so that's my shadow.
Mm,
My shadow is a liar, a manipulator, a thief, all of these things that don't resonate with me anymore, but they still exist as part of my personality. And like definitely the self-doubt, the inner critic that says, who do you think you are? Like you really think that you can make a difference? Like that's
that's
for
it.
me
Now,
as
a
well.
question for you.
And
A
yeah,
question for you. Since Richard has been able to get in the car with you, have you let the liar get in there? Have you forgiven her because she did the best she could do?
you're right. She totally did. Yeah, it hasn't, well, I feel like it's all kind of combined with each other. But yeah, the liar part of me, yeah, it comes in layers. Like, no, I haven't integrated her as far as I've integrated other pieces of myself. Like there's some things that I have like big resentment against. And like those are the things that I know I really
Work
have to
on,
work on
yeah.
healing, and it just comes in layers. I can't do everything all at once, like I'm here for a long time. It's a pace, not a race. I don't have to like do all of this work. I won't be able to integrate it if I do it all at once. And so, yeah, those are the layers that are
There
next,
has to be
for sure,
a piece to be able to go into the store and see what you charted. Because I know for me, I did a show, my one woman show, and I did my pre-birth and my children's pre. I got all kind of, yeah. And one thing that gives me peace is I know that I charted this life, and so I know I made it good for me at the end. My higher self would have
Oh
to,
yeah.
you know.
Uh-huh. I recently did a quantum healing hypnosis technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but Dolores
Oh, with
Cannon was the person who had come up with
yes,
this technique. So it's like a very famous hypnotic technique. It's a form of regression therapy where the hypnotherapist can speak directly with your
okay,
soul and ask certain questions. And so I recently did one. And, it's like been on my manifestation list for 3 years. And it was like a birthday gift that I had gotten for myself to do this. And I had seen some past lives that helped make sense of this life. And some of the lives that I had seen, one was a life in Egypt where I was like a handmaiden. Like I was, like the servant to like this very
Yes.
important woman, like I don't know if she was a queen or a royalty or whatever, but like she was very important. And my whole life's purpose was to serve her. And then she died like halfway through her life. And so I was purposeless. I had no
Mm.
purpose. And I saw myself at the end of my life with just laying on my deathbed completely alone, like feeling unfulfilled. And then I saw another life where I was like this, like a soldier. I was like wearing like big armor and like chainmail, like very heavy in this field. Like everyone is slaughtered. Like I could smell the death. And it was another life where the first half of my life was filled with so much
Mhm.
purpose. I'm a soldier. I'm going to war. I'm, like protecting my country, my land. And then the second half of that life, no purpose. I'm no longer a soldier. There's no more war. There's nothing to do. And I died in my bed, again, feeling purposeless and alone. And then it fast forwarded me to this life and it showed me that the first half of my life was without real purpose, was without spiritual
Mm.
purpose. And the second half of my life would be filled with
Mm.
purpose. And I think that I like the way that I designed that because
The
I've already
other
experienced the
two.
lives before where it was purpose and then lack. And this one, it was lack and then purpose. And yeah, I really truly believe in the pre-birth design. And I just imagine how it must be fun to be a mom and to like know that like you and your kids made this
Can I tell
decision
you what?
together.
I'll tell you the quick version of it because I can talk.
Yeah,
When
please.
I knew I was going to have children, I've known all my life that I was going to have a boy and a girl. The boy's going to be first and then the girl. I just knew it. So when I got in my 30s and it just washed over me, it was like, I need to find a man. So I started praying for my king. I go to a fight party. This guy walks in. He's highlighted like you are. I'm like, that's my baby daddy. Long
Wow.
story short, we started dating, but he didn't want children. He was adamant about it, but he wouldn't go away. So I started walking through the house because we were living together by now, talking to our unborn children, telling them to go to him because I needed him to feel it from the inside. He woke up. He said, I just saw a dream. I just had a dream. I saw our daughter. She was looking at me with your eyes and she was saying, you will not deny me. And I'm going to name her Pebbles. And I said, you can't name the child Pebbles. What's she going to be, a stripper? But secretly, I said, yes, yes, yes. But get this, a week later, I had the dream that I was leaving the hospital and I was stealing this baby boy. He had on the shirt with no bottoms and he just loved me so much and he was just crawling all over me. And there were people that were guarding the babies. But they didn't stop us because we looked like we belonged together. So I took my son and we were walking outside and it was a really bright sunny day and I couldn't find the car. So I turned back around to bring him back in. And this little boy at the door said, yo, man, what you doing back? And my son said, she'll be back to get me later. She couldn't find the car. So I woke up and I said, I'm going to have a baby. So when I got pregnant, I knew my girl was going to come first because although I never saw her, like I felt like I'd get glimpses of a shadow go by, but I never saw her. Long story short, she was stillborn and the hardest thing that I've ever experienced. And what was really hard is I was like, God, this is Tangie. Like we're a team. We do this together. And I kept asking and asking why. And I was dark and heavy. And I was standing in the green room in my home. And this voice came to me and it said, she did what you asked her to do. She just didn't do it the way you thought she would. She made her father want children.
Wow.
And literally, Betty, I saw the darkness. It started at my feet. It came up until, and then I heard the same voice said that this this soul has been here many times before and it didn't have to come back, but it chose to come back to bless the family and to experience love in the womb. And for that, she chose me.
Wow.
And after I got that, I was back. And then I remembered my dream of my son. And I started trying to help the doctors. And they said, if you get pregnant again, the same thing is going to happen. If you take the fibroid out, you won't be able to get pregnant. But if you believe God is with you, go for it. I was like, oh, God is with me. And I had my son in an all natural women's center. And then look at this. And then, like maybe 2 years later, I got pregnant again, but I wasn't ready to be pregnant because I was cute and I miscarried. But before that child miscarried, I started hearing that same voice said, it's a girl spirit, but she's not supposed to be here right now. And everybody was like, keep the faith, keep the faith. And I said, it's not that I don't have faith. I just know she told me. So when she came out, I wasn't devastated because she had told me. And I picked up the little sack and I said, if you're a jokester, you'll come back in June because their father's birthday is March the 8th. My son's March the 18th. I'm June the 4th. And she came back June the 9th. And she is a jokester. So I
Wow.
know it's all connected. You know, I know that it's all connected. And that's one of the reasons that I have so many stories that I wanted to do the podcast because there are so many people that are hurting. Like if we could go around and just vacuum everybody's mind. I love that you said you said it's the neurotransmitters, you know, and in
Yeah.
regular life that's what it is too. Like I can lay in my bed and I can be in pain. I can be sad about a lot of things if I choose to, but if I can just work around those little things, then I can have joy. I was talking to one lady and when she was telling me her experience, she was talking about some goals that she had and how she was practicing. She wasn't ready to take the step, but she was practicing, and it ended up taking her into her fullness. And for me, I would think people, if we just practice being what it is that we want to be, like when you were in the heart of the pain after you had met your higher self, you were moving forward even being afraid because you knew that there was something there. So how do we help somebody who doesn't believe in any of that, who has never experienced any of that, who just thinks that both of us are just wacko? What are you talking about? Your soul, you saw. How do we help somebody like that?
Well, I don't think that we have to do anything. Like you need do nothing. And it sounds like giving up a little bit. But I'll tell you from my own experience, right? Growing up an atheist, being so devout in my belief, I mean, like, I was hardcore. I had like long philosophical rants about how there
Okay.
was nothing more, And if somebody would have tried to rob me of my own coming
Ooh,
into awareness, my path
that's
wouldn't be what it
good.
is today. You know what I mean? So, and we're all entitled to our own beliefs. Maybe some people signed up in this life to not believe,
That's
and
so
that's okay.
good.
That's okay. They can have that space. And so for me, I just try to radiate. Like I don't have to say or do anything. I don't have to pressure you into my beliefs. I can share my experience if you're willing to listen. Like some people have seen who I was before and who I am now, and they're like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I found Jesus." But like, but yes,
Yes,
but no.
yes,
You know what I mean? Like I found some spirituality, I found
yes,
something to believe in, and I know that it
yes,
radiates off of me. Because like I said, I am
yes,
alive now. And if people are interested in hearing about that, yeah, we sound
yes.
weird to some people. But you know what? There's a lot
There's
of
a
us
lot of
that
us that
sound
sound
weird.
weird.
Like weird in quotes. And like for me, that's been the main part of like the beauty of this whole experience is finding the members of my soul
Mm.
family. Like finding connections with people like just like this one where it's so hyper, it's just so
Yes.
hyped. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
vibrating so high and there's so much frequency here and it feels like truth and it's
Yes.
like every inch of your body is covered
Yes.
in goosebumps and like I love that feeling of connection with members of my soul family. Like I know that the people that I encounter on my path today are in the same troop as me. Like, like we're in the
Yes.
same command. And yeah, like so for me, community has been such a big part of my process. Being able to connect with other people to give people a voice to their spiritual experiences, to give them a space to flourish. I work for the International Association for Near Death Studies now. I work for their production, and I find speakers for their webinars. And it's just a beautiful gift to be able to give people a space to stand in their spiritual
Wow.
truth, and to be part of a community where we all sound a little
Right.
weird.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's absolutely beautiful to me, and my soul is just filled up right now. It is just absolutely
Me too.
filled. I I I I like that you said let people find their own way, because some of my shadows are mine are make I could have made different choices, and but I look at those choices that I've made now and I say, if I hadn't done it the way I did it, then I wouldn't be where I am. But at the same, when
Absolutely.
I see all of the people who are sad because of people passing, I want them to know, oh, I want to know about the
Mm.
quantum healing. I'll ask you after we get off the regression, because I've studied Brian Weiss. So with
Oh,
all
yeah.
of the, and Dolores Cannon too, but I know about the other side, and I just feel like if they knew, if they could believe it, then they wouldn't be in such pain. But how dare I rob them of their journey? So my job is just to share. You're awesome.
You're awesome.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I have one more question. After you had this whole
Yeah.
spiritual awakening, how was your sister processing this?
Oh, that's a good question. So I don't have much of a relationship with my sister. We just have reconnected over the last couple of months, which is an
Wow.
absolute miracle. After our parents died, like I felt like I had this burden of having to take care of her. And I didn't want to be a parent.
Um,
I just wanted to be like a grieving 23-year-old. And so we just kept abandoning each other back and forth. Like I abandoned her, and then she rejected me, and then she
mm,
abandoned me, and then I abandoned, and it went back and forth for over a decade. It's been that way. And then I decided to get clean. And, just because I decided to change my life, come onto a spiritual path, and stop using drugs doesn't mean that doesn't repair all the damage that I've
right,
caused in my
right.
life. You know what I mean? And so our relationship is slowly healing. I could be a little overbearing. So I've recognized that in myself in that particular
Mm,
relationship anyway. And so, yeah, it's amazing though how like, my sister and my cousin, who's like a sister to me, like their perception has opened up quite a bit. Like I talk about some of these weird and wacky things and they're like,
okay.
okay, maybe, and I love hearing that because I would never think that they would
Wow.
think that way. But thank
I
you for
like a
asking
lot of your
about that.
weird
Yeah.
and wacky ways. I know sometimes, like I do a lot of visualizations, because for me, when I see it, I feel like it's happening. They're not always things that I see, they're things that I'm creating. Like when the darkness came out of me, I saw that. But sometimes I might imagine that I'm
Mm,
being flooded. My chakras are being cleansed and flooded with peace and love and joy, and I'm releasing whatever it is that's on me, and I imagine it as a liquid, and it just, and then I feel like,
wow.
so anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for coming
Thank
on Heaven
you.
High. If you know of anybody else that you think would love to come on,
I definitely will send you a
please,
million
please,
people.
please,
Yes.
please. You are
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm just so thankful that God brought us, well, should I say God? Well, that the spirits, our higher selves, the
Yeah.
angels, the ascended masters, whoever it is on the other side, I'm just
Yes.
glad the
Yes.
Holy Spirit, all, when I talk to
Hmm.
people and they say, well, you can't, I'm like, my mother's name was Betty. But if I say, hey, she would answer. If I said mother, she would answer. If I
Of
said Miss
course.
Ambrose, she would answer. So that's how all that, yes. So
Yes.
thank you
I
so
love
much
that.
for coming on. I don't want to hang up, but I'm going to hang up so that, maybe you'll want to come back one day. We can talk about something different.
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for
You're
allowing me into your
welcome.
dream.
Blessings to you. Bye. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wasn't that amazing? Wasn't that amazing? I am so moved, and I hope that she touched your heart the way she touched mine, and that you have something that you can take with you to apply to your life, whether it's a visualization or just knowing that we are not alone, that we are actually divinely guided and protected. Um, and that there's work out here that you can do to make yourself into whatever you would like to be. And a big thing that she said, just ask for help. Just ask. If you want help and you don't know what to do, ask for it. Do like Betty did. Write it down, then believe, and then take some action. It doesn't have to be a big action. It can be just to stand outside and let the forces that be do the rest of the work. Heaven high, y'all. Thank you so much. Bye.